Welcome to today's episode of Woo News TV. Today we're going to talk about yoga. You might think you know everything about yoga. Maybe you do yoga. Maybe you do yoga for fitness. Maybe you do it for your mind, or maybe it's your meditation. Today we're going to talk about things regarding yoga you probably didn't know with my guest, Kristin Schneider. Welcome, Kristin.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. Kristin is amazing. She's amazing at handstand inversions, if that's what you call them. Okay. She can fold herself in half on her hands. Yes. Maybe we'll get a little chance to see her doing that later.
That'd be pretty sweet.
Kristin has been teaching yoga for 12 years, but practicing for 15.
Yes.
And how did you get into that, Kristin?
So 12 years ago, I had an employee of mine who said, "Hey, do you want to go take a yoga class?" And I said, "Yoga? What's that?" Okay, sure. I guess we'll pop into a yoga class, and went in and absolutely hated it. It was which is ironic.
Yes.
It was a chair yoga class. And if you're familiar with chair yoga, obviously sit in a chair.
Yes.
Yeah. So my first ever yoga class was chair yoga. Okay. So I'm used to playing sports my whole life, working out. That was something that I really kind of threw myself into throughout my childhood and high school and into college. So I was used to sweating. I was used to constantly moving. And then I walked into a yoga class, chair yoga specifically. And we sat there and did some very light stretches. Needless to say, I didn't sweat. I was bored.
No.
And I walked out of there thinking I would never take a yoga class again. And my employee at the time laughed because she really loved it and she thought it was great. And she was like, "Okay, I guess it's not your thing." I'm like, "Nope, it's definitely not my thing." And then there was probably a couple of weeks that went by and I decided to try it again. Because I don't want to give up on something just because, you try it one time. So I walked into a power yoga class. So chair yoga, power yoga. And again, if you're familiar with the difference between the two, very night and day.
Very different.
And yes. And I mean, I didn't even have words for it. I walked out of there and was like, what in the world just happened? It was the hardest thing I've ever done. The students that were in there, what they were doing, the poses they were doing, the inversions they were doing, I was just dumbfounded, really, honestly. I'm like, how do people move their bodies like that? And I had no idea what was going on. I remember laying in shavasana and had my eyes open because I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I'm like,
and remind everybody what shavasana is. Tell everybody what that is.
Yeah. So shavasana at the end is at the end of a yoga class where we all lie down and basically just relax and let the practice settle in our bodies and
with our eyes
get
closed.
comfortable with our eyes closed. Although I will say this, that a lot of students don't close their eyes, and that's okay too. Okay. The second class that I took, but when I first experienced shavasana, because we didn't do it in chair yoga, I didn't know that I didn't know anything. I didn't know that I was even supposed to lay down. Right. And so I remember peeking my head up and looking around the room, and everybody was, they looked angelic and blissed out and, towels over the eyes and just relaxed. And here I was like, am I supposed to be doing something? Should I be going somewhere? Should I be breathing? Like why is everybody like just still again? Yeah. And so, so that was my second class, and that intrigued me so much. And it caught my attention that, I wanted to go back and I wanted to try it again. And I think that's like my type A personality. I don't like to not be good at things. I like to be good at things right away. Maybe that's the perfectionism in me. But I knew that I found something that sparked my attention, at least physically speaking. And I wanted to keep at it and just keep practicing and see kind of what would transpire from there in terms of the physical aspect of it, right? The physical postures and stuff. Cause I like to learn, and I wanted to learn more, and I wanted to understand more about this practice that all these students that were around me in that second class were like, what are they doing? What's a warrior A? What's a handstand? What is shavasana?
So would you consider this, I think I know the answer to this, but I would like you to answer this.
Yeah.
Would you consider yoga as part of your spiritual practice?
Yes. Yes,
And what else
absolutely.
is part of your spiritual practice? What else do you incorporate into that?
So meditation. Meditation is a part of my spiritual practice, although I don't meditate as much as I would like.
No, I can say that too. Those binaural beats we were just talking about, Kristin and I were speaking before the show about binaural beats that I've talked about before. And that's also a way to meditate, by the way.
Yes. I think letting go of the stigma of what we think meditation is, like sitting in lotus, and as soon as you close your eyes, that all of a sudden you're just present and you're not caught up in your head with all these swirling thoughts. I think letting that go makes meditation a little bit easier. And I think as I've grown in my own yoga practice and my own spiritual journey, I've let go of that idea of what I think meditation should be. And the perfectionism in me, the perfectionist, was able to drop in and really embrace it. And I think that's been a part of my spiritual practice as well. Like I said, I don't do it as much as I'd like. You wake up in the morning, you're like, the last thing I want to do is sit there and meditate, or I don't have time. I want to sleep.
Monkey mind kicks in.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So I think meditation is a part of my spiritual practice. I love to read. I love to learn. I think I mentioned that earlier too. I was always really good in school. I love to study. I just want to understand. I'm a why person. My husband laughs at me all the time because he'll say something to me and I'll go, but why? Like, why did they do that? He's like, I don't have the answer. So I want to learn, and I want to understand as much as I can about all subjects, but specifically spirituality. And so any type of text that aligns with that, I think that helps me also kind of go down the spiritual path, the spiritual journey. And actually, yeah. So
what's your favorite book?
Oh God. Well, I have a few.
One of your top favorites. You could name
yeah,
one
I was
of
gonna say I have a few. I was gifted probably 2 years into my yoga journey, a book from a yoga teacher by Eckhart Tolle, which I'm sure everybody knows that book and has read it. I've read it 1,000 times. I highlight, I like use a pen and line stuff. I, write into it. The Power of Now. So again, a book that a lot of people have read and know him, and he's incredible. So that book kind of really changed things for me. Nice. Really took me down a different path than I think I was on. And again, that was 2 years into my yoga journey. And then the second book that I used to read out of a lot is The Mandala of Being by Richard Moss. Another book that is just torn up, highlighted. I like mark pages. I'm like, read this in class or reference back to this. So so books are definitely
I have to look at that second one. I'm not familiar with that one.
The Mandala of Being. Yeah. It's intense. And I remember the first time I read it, it was a lot to digest.
Yeah, it's probably a little heady.
Super heady.
Yeah.
Very deep. And although I like to believe I'm a deep person, there are some concepts that I'm like, it's just beyond me. And it's hard for me to try to understand. So
maybe you understand them on some level already.
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay, let's talk about yoga. Let's talk about the obvious physical aspect of yoga, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The poses, a lot of gyms carry yoga. Some yoga teachers incorporate the actual truths of yoga in their class. Some it's just more the fitness aspect.
Yep.
The mental helps us calm our minds as we do the breath work, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And let's talk about what people might not know of another benefit of yoga is the 8 limbs of yoga. What are those? What does that mean, 8 limbs of yoga?
So it's a system, you think of it like that, or a set of guidelines, or I like to think of it also as a roadmap. It's something that we as yoga teachers learn when we go through teacher training, right? And then it's something you may incorporate some of it in your yoga classes, but we don't talk a lot about it, right? So you almost forget about the 8 limbs until you really start to put it into practice, until you really start to incorporate it into your daily life as much as you can, because that's what it is. It's a way to, I think, find purpose in life. I think to find self-realization, to gain wisdom. It's a amazing system that was created for us and anybody, but yogis, right? To be a part of. And so there's 8 limbs, and
My
they
list
are
right here.
I know. I'm glad you got your list. So
It's a
the
way of
yama,
living. It's a way of life, right?
yes, it's a way of life.
A path to reach communion with the divine, to reach enlightenment, awakening.
And I would think
on that path.
also to like have form a better relationship with yourself, right? I mean, the most important relationship I think that you can have is the one you have with yourself. And I think that this path that we follow can really help us attain that, or at least work on that throughout our life. Because I don't necessarily think there's something to attain in
We're always
practicing it.
seeking to attain, right?
Right.
It
right.
seems to me this is mastery of the ego, right? We have the ego and we have the self. The self is our inner light, our essence, our fractal of God that we all are. And then we have the ego, which isn't a bad thing, but it's what creates the separation from source, from that light, the essence of who we are. So this just came to me. So tell me if you agree with this. The 8 limbs are the path to mastering the ego and connecting with that source of self within.
Yeah. Absolutely, because we're disconnected a lot of times, right? I mean, think about
most of the time. I would say.
I was going to say most of the time. I know. I say a lot of the times. I really mean most of the time.
That's very polite of you, Kristin.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to be nice. Yes, we are constantly distracted, right? Obviously, by everything,
especially now.
Especially now, and so. Because of that, we become further and further disconnected from ourselves. And the idea is that the 8 limbs of yoga gives us this opportunity to stay the path or find, we're looking for paths too. I think to some degree, all of us are looking for something.
Direction.
Guidance, direction, guidance, all of that. And this is, again, something we talk about in YTT, but something that we really don't touch on a lot of after,
well, like when I asked you to talk about this, you were surprised. You said
I was.
I don't even know about the 8 limbs of yoga. I think I called it the 6 branches at the time.
Yeah.
But,
8. I think that's a normal thing too. I think even like students, yoga students that come into class, they don't know about the 8 limbs unless they've been practicing for a long time and maybe they've gone through teacher training. They have no idea that this even exists. And so every now and then,
it's just become such a fitness craze too. It's not quite the focus.
Yes. Well, like even last night I taught a class and I talked about pratyahara, which is the withdrawal of senses, which is one of the limbs.
5.
Yes, number 5. And we'll go back to the beginning. But
okay, yes.
I had just, it came to me because I kind of allow that to happen when I'm teaching. Things just, especially when everybody's laying down at the end, and Shavasana gives me a time to collect my thoughts and meditate a little bit as well. And I get downloads a lot during that time, which is
that a lot of times.
Yes. And it's lately it's happened a lot more. And that's been really exciting, but also in the moment, it's hard to try to navigate all those thoughts that are coming up so that I can articulate it in a way that students understand. But I brought that up and I said that I talked about that limb last night, and I haven't done that in years. And it just came to me, and maybe because I knew you and I were going to do this today, and maybe it's just like swirling around in my mind. But it was really cool because I felt it was receptive from some of the students, or maybe from everybody. And it was fun for me to talk about something other than just the physical aspect.
Well, and as I've read this list of the limbs over and over again, it's very clear. They lay it out exactly how it applies to everyday life. So, okay, so let's start. Number 1, yamas. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yep, yamas.
What is
so think of yamas as moral codes, your ethical standards. So I think there's 5. So the first one is ahimsa. I feel like I always say, I think most people know this, and maybe they don't, but ahimsa is nonviolence, right? And so I think that's one that, at least from a practitioner standpoint, I hear a lot of it in the yoga world, in the wellness world, especially lately, talking about violence and what's going on in the world. And so I think this is an easier yama to try to understand because based off of what it says, nonviolence, right? So we know that physically we're not going to hurt each other, but there's more to that too than just the physical aspect. It's our words, right? How we speak to each other,
Mhm.
how we speak about each other. And then further than that, how do we talk to ourselves? What do we think about up here? Are we being
We don't
violent
think
with our
about that,
words?
do we? Yeah.
We don't. And it's interesting to have those moments where you're like, wow, I am like self-sabotaging right now. And to be so aware of that. And I think in the last few years, I've become even more aware of that because I see how detrimental it can be. So ahimsa is definitely one that, a yama that we as a whole can work on a lot more, definitely, or incorporate it more.
You said there's how many in yamas? There's 6?
Five.
Okay.
Five yamas and then 5 niyamas. So you've got ahimsa, then you've got satya, which is truthfulness.
Okay.
So truthfulness, being truthful, obviously with our words, with our intent. And you can think of satya as not necessarily something that you do, but maybe something that you refrain from doing, or a way of like slowing down. So before
Or
speaking,
mindful speaking.
you think about,
Okay.
you think about what you're going to say before you say it, right?
Impulse control.
Yes. Which is hard. It's hard, and you don't realize too sometimes how damaging your words can be. And you maybe your intent behind it was not for it to be that way, but the other person can take that like that. And so it's just something to be more aware of, for sure.
I'd like to add to that and tell me if you agree with this. I talk a lot about standing in your truth and speaking your truth when necessary, but really knowing your truth and standing in your truth. Is that an aspect of this too, or is that not?
Yes.
Here? Okay.
No. Absolutely. Standing in your truth. And I share this with the high school students that I teach, because we talk a lot about the 8 limbs, but being truthful in what you feel, right? And sharing that, and but also doing it with your beliefs. Yeah. But doing so with kindness too.
Yeah.
We don't want to speak our truth and it come off as ego.
Right. Oof, yeah. Okay.
Which it can.
Yeah. Probably more than we realize.
Right? Mm-hmm. Yes. Way more than we realize, for sure. Third one is asteya. Asteya. So non-stealing, right? In the physical aspect, not walking into a store and taking something. The example that comes to mind is Winona Ryder. Right off the bat, I don't know why.
Okay.
Probably because I'm
thought about that in a while.
I'm currently watching Stranger Things, and I think of how she stole things. Yeah. So physical, in terms of the physical aspect of it, just not taking things or stealing.
I want to throw something else at you. And this might not apply, but I'd like your opinion on this. What about taking people's energy?
So that was my next point, and I love that you
brought
that up. No, I love that.
Okay.
That was perfect, because we all have or know people who are energy vampires, right? That just suck our energy out. And also not taking us being aware of the energy that we're taking from other people. And so I think this is this yama is a good practice to have in terms of setting boundaries. I think it gives us the opportunity to set boundaries with maybe when we realize, hey, like our energy, it's like after you have lunch or dinner with somebody and you're like, wow, that was a lot. Right. And again, we've all probably experienced that before. And remembering that, hey, like maybe that person isn't somebody that I can spend that much time with. And so set boundaries, and also being aware of the energy that we're putting off on other people. I feel like that's something I check all the time. And when I walk into a room, do I come in, warm and open and smiley, or am I coming in, with resting bitch face?
That's good. Well, I also think it's a reminder to us that we don't need anybody else's energy. We have all the light that we need. That we need inside. We just have to find it ourselves. They don't have more than we don't than we do, and they don't have less than lacking to give them ours. So it's all about being more self-sovereign in your own energy bubble, as I like to say.
Absolutely, I love that. Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, number 4.
And
in the yamas, still on number 1.
Still in the yamas.
Okay.
Which is so funny, because when I talk about this with my high school students, they're like, wait, what? 8 limbs, but we're in the yama still, and that's the first limb. So it can be very, confusing. But I think again, once you start to go through it, it makes a lot of sense, and one leads into the next.
And these yamas kind of remind me of like the 10 commandments, but yet the 5.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So the fourth one is brahmacharya. And so brahmacharya, I think, is one, again, that can be kind of hard to understand.
Good luck explaining this one.
I know, right? So the translation is celibacy, right? So, and when I talk to my high school students, they giggle because they just can't understand why we're talking about celibacy. Why is she talking? I'm so uncomfortable right now.
What is my mom gonna think?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I have to be mindful of that too. And what information I'm giving to these 16, 17, 18-year-olds. So
raging hormones and all of that.
Yeah, exactly. I like to look at this yama as like the right use of energy. So, we all have pleasures in life and things that we like to partake in. And we don't want to do those just to do them if they're not helping us move to our higher self. Because it's fleeting. Those pleasures are fleeting. And so finding the right use of our energy just continues to bring us, peace and happiness, and not just because in that one moment it feels really good, to do that. So that's kind of
stated.
Yeah. Was that good? Okay. That's what I try to tell my high schoolers too. So
have intention behind what you're doing, and
always intention behind what we're doing. Right. And that's something that I think we learn as we get older too, like having intention behind. Okay. So hopefully, right. The last yama is aparigraha. So aparigraha is, you can think of this as non-greed or non-attachment. And the first example,
non-coveting in a biblical sense.
Yes, exactly. Okay. And the first example that comes to mind is when during COVID, the toilet paper outage, and everybody went and bought, just so much. They bought so much toilet paper that it didn't leave any for the, everybody else that needed some. So that's what I think of. It's like hoarding a little bit. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. Hopefully
that was number 1, the yamas. Number 2 is
niyamas. Yeah. I say niyama.
Okay.
You probably say
I don't know how to say
niyama. Yeah. Niyama. So the niyamas are your personal behavior. So yamas, obviously the moral codes, right? And then now niyamas are personal behavior. So first one is saucha. Saucha is cleanliness, or purity. The idea with this one is, keeping our physical body clean, showering, brushing our teeth, and what we need to do to keep ourselves clean. But, bigger than that, keeping our environment clean, where we are, where we live, our office space. And then I think even further than that, being aware of our thoughts, keeping our thoughts and clean. I say, that's hard. I think that's not an easy niyama to, at least that aspect of it, to.
How about positive?
Yeah, positive, like having positive thoughts, right? I mean, we know that if we're in a negative frame of mind, our outward world is going to look like that, right?
And I always say, if you can't go positive, go neutral.
Yes.
Just make it a neutral thought. If you can't in that moment, go positive, because it's just so whatever it is.
Yeah.
Gotta just
absolutely
level out the emotion.
Yeah, exactly. So saucha. I think one, again, that's pretty easy to understand. It's kind of like a himsa, pretty easy to get. Number 2 is santosha. So santosha is contentment. And this is an interesting one. It's, we want to be content where we are, but that doesn't mean complacent, right? That doesn't mean we don't have goals and we don't have desires to do more for ourselves or be a better version of ourselves. But maybe letting go of I'll be happy when, like getting rid of that verbiage, right? So being content with what we have, being content with where we're at, but also having goals and desires, and that's okay. But just letting go of that, I'll be happy when I am a millionaire. Right. I'll be happy, when I'm not working 40 hours a week or whatever. Right. So yeah. Okay. So that was number 2. Number 3, tapas. So tapas, I like to explain. Tapas.
Oh,
Tapas. Yeah,
okay.
tapas.
As in the food. I'm thinking of the food.
As in, I know it's funny you say that because I think that too. And I'm like, am I saying that right? Tapas? Yeah. So tapas, you can think of this in terms of yoga, your physical practice, right? The discipline that comes with your physical practice. I think it's also that fiery passion that you're taking toward your purpose. So it's that whatever you love or whatever you're doing in this world, that is your purpose, to continue to put discipline and energy into that.
Like your soul's purpose.
Totally. Yeah. And just whatever. And sometimes it takes a long time to figure out what that is too. And I think we're all still trying to figure that out, I'm sure, to some degree.
That also doesn't have to be action. Like what I tell my clients is, some of them I see clearly is their soul's purpose is just being a bright light for everybody else to be around. It can be that.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to
It can be that simple
for a living.
No. Yeah.
You being you can be your purpose.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be this big complex thing,
Right.
For some people it is, and they become, their purpose is world renowned.
Mhm.
But like you said, it could just be that you're a bright light for everybody in your life. And that's a really beautiful thing. So putting energy to that, right?
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but just in the physical aspect, it's the discipline of, movement. So for me, like movement is a non-negotiable. I move every day, whether it's 10 minutes in sun salutations or it's an hour work,out, I'm moving.
So would this be where the yoga poses come into play?
Yeah, you can think of it like that, or just the discipline behind practicing yoga.
Okay.
I think Patanjali probably means like the actual practice of yoga, like practicing, having the discipline to get on your mat, even when it may not be.
Patanjali is who?
He's you can think of him as the father of yoga and the one who came up with the whole system, 8 limbs of
Got it.
yoga.
Wanted to make sure everybody knew that. Okay.
Yes. As I just throw out this random name.
Well, I should have mentioned it from the beginning. I meant
That's
to do
okay.
that and I forgot. So I wanted to get him in there. Okay.
Yes, there we go. Okay, so that's 3, right? So we're on the 4th one. So the 4th one, Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya, gosh. And please forgive me, those of you that are listening to this that are Sanskrit teachers. I do the best that I can. I want to do this beautiful language justice. This word is definitely one that is more challenging to say. Swadhyaya. So Swadhyaya is the self-study. So the idea that, and I look at this one, and maybe not everybody thinks of it like this, but I'm always a student. I'm always going to be a student. And I feel like there's always going to be somebody that knows more than me. And I want to continue to learn as much as I can and gather as much knowledge as I can. And so I look at this niyama as a way to keep studying, as a way to view yourself as a student always, first and foremost, right. To continue to gather knowledge and read and listen to lectures or podcasts or whatever that helps fill that. Further than that, though, you can look at it as a self-study of yourself, right? Bringing your attention to yourself, right? Checking in with yourself. So always studying, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? Or, am I in my truth? Am I speaking my truth?
Would addressing one's limiting beliefs, patterns, fears fall into that too?
I think so. Yeah. I think if you're studying yourself,
to become a better version of yourself.
Yeah. Okay. And to understand yourself more too.
Yeah, I guess I do have this fear and maybe this is why. And yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. So yeah, you can look at it, like that a little deeper than just the actual like studying, reading books and texts and spiritual texts, which is great too. It serves its purpose. Absolutely.
Never stop learning. And you could also say never stop growing, to throw that in there too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like the end if you think that you know everything. Okay. Last one, the niyamas is ishvara, pranayama. So that's a mouthful.
Wait, we're still on the niyamas. Oh my.
Yeah, we are still in
on number 2. Okay.
Yeah, we're still on the second limb. So so ishvara pranayama is devotion to whatever your God is, source, nature, oneness, and I look at this too as faith, right? Having faith in whatever higher power you look to help guide you, or just have trust, right? not to let go of expectations and have
Trust
trust
in the order
in
of
that.
things. Trust.
Yep, in the order of things. Yeah. So that's the 5 niyamas.
Got it. So it's 5 yamas and 5 niyamas. And how many
niyamas.
of number 3 are there?
How many, what was that?
Of number 3 are there?
Oh, yeah. Number 3, the third limb. Yeah. So
how
third limb.
how many branches are in the third limb?
Oh, there's only one.
Okay.
Going forward, there's only, so the yamas and the niyamas are the ones that have the different branches.
Okay.
And then going forward now it gets more complex, I think, but we won't have like sub branches.
But that was my word, by the way. I don't know if that's really what they call them, but the branches was my word.
I like that word.
Okay.
I think that works.
I like the visual of it. So
yeah, I like the visual. I'm a visual person, so that definitely helps me. Okay, so third limb is asana, which is easy for most people to understand, and probably where a lot of practitioners live in terms of the 8 limbs is asana, which are the poses, the practice itself, the postures. But asana,
the down dogs, the warriors, the
handstands, the headstands, yes, all of that, the forward folds, all of that, the whole practice, even shavasana. So asana though translates to seat. So, and more specifically to have a seat or take a seat before meditation. So the idea that Patanjali had with this limb was that we are steady and comfortable in our physical practice and what we're doing. That's the only requirement, so to speak, was that you are steady, that you are comfortable, and that eventually you get to a point where you can just sit and you can be with yourself and prep for meditation. So
nice. Okay, that's nice.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, I mean, we've modernized it.
Right, but I didn't realize that was the function of it was to prep for meditation. I thought it was just the physical aspect of the yoga.
Yeah, and I think it is. I think it's both. That the translation is seat, but I think over the years, as it's migrated, west, it's become showy. The yoga practice itself has become very showy and flashy, and although fun, and I partake in a lot of that too. And it's fun to, learn new poses and transitions and things that are exciting and catch your attention. At the end of the day, it's not about that, right? That's just such a small portion of it.
Well, they always tell you in class, just mind your mat. Don't look at what anybody else is doing. Doesn't matter. They're not looking at you. Don't look at them. Just be on your mat and keep everything there.
I say all the time, it's a solo journey. That's it. Yeah. It's a solo journey on your mat always. Physically speaking, obviously, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of it is a solo journey. So yeah. And then, further than that, obviously, it's just to prep yourself at some point to be able to sit with yourself.
And be able to put your hips and your legs in that position.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that in itself, I mean, to sit in lotus or to sit even just in, a cross leg position.
Right.
I don't know about you, but as I've gotten older, I'm like, this is not so comfortable. It's not so comfortable. So
I gotta have stuff sitting under me and propped up and
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Me too. And actually I would prefer to just lie down.
Me too.
Can I just, and meditation can be like that too, right? That again, the stigma behind it is that we have to sit there in lotus, perfectly straight and still, and that's just not the case. So it can be walking, it being, laying down. So yeah. Okay. Fourth limb is pranayama. So pranayama, again, another limb that I think is easier to understand and digest is pranayama. Pranayama is breath or breath control or breath restraint. So prana means life force or this energy. I like to explain to my high schoolers because they really have a hard time understanding prana, right? Prana is a concept that I think can be challenging to understand what it is in general for anybody. It's not tangible.
The same thing as chi. Would people know chi?
Right. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So I think it's something
still intangible, but that people.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. People know that word. Yeah. Yeah. So for my high school students, I explain it to them in a way that's like a mystical energy, something that is within us that we know is there, and at times we connect to it and we feel it, but then other times we're really disconnected to it, and also feels, I think, especially for our younger generation, it can be harder for them to really understand what that is and why would we want to connect to that? Like
Right.
what is moving within us? Like, isn't it just my body, and my mind? So, breath or pranayama is the idea that so there's a lot of different breath practices that we can partake in. Ujjayi is the one we use when on our mat. And I always say this too in my classes, that although Ujjayi, the victorious breath, that's the translation of that. Although we talk about that and that is the practice we use when we're on our mat, sometimes it's not accessible. And we want to just be able to breathe comfortably, right? I always tell my students, I don't want you to be fighting your breath the whole class. I don't want you to be fighting your body the whole class. That's not what it's about. If I'm encouraging you to practice Ujjayi breathing, but that's not something that works for you, then just breathe how you normally breathe, right? Just work on slowing down your breath. That in itself can really change your physicality, but also your mind, right? So
I learned alternate nostril breathing in yoga class. My first
Yes.
exposure to yoga 30 years
Nadi
ago.
Shodhana,
Iyengar yoga, and she taught us that.
Yep.
I'd like to demonstrate what that is so people can try that at home.
Oh boy. So the way that I learned how to do it, and I think I've seen it a couple different ways, where you put your 2 fingers, 2 or 3 fingers, I think you put all 3 in the center of your forehead. I like to close 2 of my fingers, my pointer finger and my middle finger, and keep that versus here. For some reason, that feels more comfortable.
I just do this and this. I don't do
and you can
that.
do that too. Yeah, and I think you can do that too. And it's with your right hand. So I was always taught with the right hand. So but yeah, so the idea is that you're holding down one nostril, breathing in through, like, let's just say the left nostril, closing the nostril, opening up the right nostril and breathing out. So when you go
and then inhaling on the right and closing off the right and exhaling out the left. And I actually had, and you do a cycle of this. I actually had a doctor hook me up to a machine to show me what it does to my system when I did that for even just 5 minutes. And it slowed.
Was it mind blowing?
Down. Yeah. Slowed
It's probably really interesting to see that, to see something again, tangible. That's like, you're like, wow.
See the evidence, actual evidence.
It's evidence. It's actual evidence. Yeah. Yeah. So that's just one type of breathing. And that breathing, Nadi Shodhana, so nadis, we have, I think, like 72,000 nadis in our body, and that those are channels. So our energy, our prana, are moving through those channels, and so they get restricted. They become restricted sometimes, right? What we're doing in general, our energetic restrictions physically, we can restrict our bodies and all of it. And so pranayama gives us the ability, this breath practice or breath restraint or whatever type of practice you're doing, to help move the energy freer in the nadis. So in those channels. So it's
better. You're more relaxed. Everything.
Yeah. Well, your body, I mean, just in general, we know, scientifically speaking, we have more oxygen in our body. Our body just functions better. Right.
That's
so just on a very basic level. And then I share that too with my high school students, because they can understand that. So there's a lot of different types of breathing, but it's a powerful aspect of, I mean, I say all the time, it's the foundation, right? It's the foundation of the practice. You have to first learn how to breathe, but also be aware of your breath. I mean, how often are we not even aware of our breathing?
I've heard one yoga teacher say, if you're not breathing, you're just doing aerobics.
I mean, you're just in a bunch of crazy poses, right?
Yeah.
And
it's not yoga. It's not yoga.
Right. Well, and then you're in a posture, and let's say you're not breathing, your shoulders are like this and you're tensed up. I mean,
defeats the purpose.
It defeats the whole purpose. But when you're newer to yoga, you don't know, right? You're just trying to survive. You're just trying to understand. Understand, what we're to be doing on our mats. So
which is why teachers always prompt you to go back to your breath.
Yes, always. And I say that so much.
Yeah, you do.
Oh, and I annoy myself. It's good, but
it's good because we forget.
We forget. And I think I probably say it a lot because I forget in my own practice, right? My mind trails off into something like dinner, or the dogs are running around and, distracting me. And before I know it, I'm like, oh, whoa, okay. Come back to the breathing. So that's why I talk so much about it in my own classes. So. Yeah.
Okay. Number 5.
So pratyahara. So pratyahara is the withdrawal senses. And this is the limb that I was talking about earlier.
Withdrawal of senses. Okay.
Withdrawal senses. Yeah. The one that I had spoke about last night in one of my classes. So another limb that I think is a little elusive and hard for students to wrap their head around, because you hear that and you think, and I'm guilty of this, because I think the first time I learned it, I was like, what? Withdrawal senses? I'm supposed to just like stay at home and not be engaged in the world and make connections and just, you know, be a hermit,
Right.
and not be a part of anything out there. Because at the end of the day, that's not going to be the case, right? We are constantly stimulated. We're with everything. And so I think my understanding as it's evolved with pratyahara is that we can still be engaged in the world. We can still go about our business and our responsibilities and our roles, but not be disturbed, right? Not be disturbed, like mentally speaking. So I think of the best example I can think of is in shavasana, right? We lie down. And as our muscles start to relax, the breath starts to slow down and we let go, we have this, I don't want to say euphoric feeling, but a little euphoric bliss, like just laying there very comfortable. That's one part of it, right? So then you take it a step further and you start to withdraw even more. It's like being at the bottom of a well. You recognize and register that there's sounds around you, but your body is not disturbed by it. Your mind's not disturbed by it.
So it's like becoming more non-reactive.
Yes.
Or less
That's
reactive.
That's exactly right. So in the physical aspect, in terms of yoga, that's like the best example I can think of, right off the top of my head is in shavasana. But yes, further than that.
In life, just react less. You see something, don't let it trigger you, stay more centered.
Yes. Which is so hard. I mean,
it's definitely a practice, that's for sure.
It's a practice that I practice every day, right? There's that knee jerk reaction. We're trying to avoid that. Yes, we're trying to avoid that, the best that we can. But again, I think that that's unavoidable. I think we're, for the rest of our lives, that we are going to have moments where that happens, and I think that that's okay, and to give ourselves grace.
But I would imagine that as these limbs are laid out, each one helps you master the next one. So the more you do the asanas, the more you do the pranayama, the easier it will be to not react. Okay.
Absolutely. They basically lead into one another, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So pratyahara is definitely one of my favorite ones to really observe. And I observe it a lot in my own practice, right? I get on my mat and I'm in a challenging pose, and the mind, right? It's like, get me out of this pose. And then sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I feel great in it, or, my mind trails off into thought. I there's an email that I didn't respond to, and I'm like, oh crap, I need to do that. Right. So it's like the constant hamster wheel of that our minds are. And when I notice that, when I observe that that's what's happening, that's when I go back to, instead of my thoughts about the pose, right? And what I'm like, oh God, this pose is challenging, or I can't wait to stop doing this, which doesn't happen often. The stopping, I love to, I could practice all day, every day, I feel like, but you get in classes that are where a pose is really challenging. So my idea is that I want to feel like what, instead of like the thoughts about it, I just want to drop into the pose and be there. And
like, where's my foot? Can I feel my foot on the floor?
Yeah. Sensation.
Yeah. Get you back in your body, which gets you present.
Exactly. Back in the body, back to being present and not trailing off into the thousands or buying into the stories that our minds are telling us in that moment. And two, I mean, practicing in a yoga room, we get distracted all the time by music, by the heat, by students around us.
Somebody sneezing.
I joke. Exactly. I joke all the time that, I see someone in a cute pair of pants and I'm like, oh, I like her pants. Yeah. Right. Or I like her outfit. And it's like, whoa, rein it back in. So, but definitely one of my more favorite limbs.
Okay. Number 6.
Yeah. Number 6. So dharana. So this is focused concentration. This limb, I would say, again, one of the harder ones, I think, to try to experience, because it's something that I would say, don't do often unless we're meditating, right? Unless we're sitting down and we're focusing in, or I guess in our yoga practice, when we focus on our breath, that's, focus, concentration. But it's not something that I feel like it just happens, right? So I think that it has to be intentional, and there's different ways we can do that. Visualization, the breath, like I said, mantras, chanting. Chanting is something that, oh my gosh, if you've ever get an opportunity to chant, it is, again, our language, Sanskrit, is so beautiful.
Nice.
And to learn the chanting and learn how to say it correctly, gives you something to focus on, because you're thinking about the words and not thinking about something else.
Is that, so I used to take Kundalini when the gym had it, and some of those songs and chants, is that Sanskrit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. I loved that.
I know, I love it too. And I think I think of those moments when, let's say, you're in a deep conversation with a friend, or you're out in nature, and you're listening to the trees blow in the wind, or you see a beautiful sunset, or you gaze into a child's eyes, right? You lose all sense of time. That's because you're so focused on what you're doing. You're that focused concept. You're present. Yes, it's about being present. Yeah. So, and we have those moments. Again, they're not planned. I think that I think that it can happen, but also when we realize the importance of it and putting it into practice, then we want to do it more often, because it does help us, right? The breathing, visualization, candle gazing. That's another one. I don't know if I mentioned that. That's a good one too. Looking at a wick. Wow. That's pretty cool too. So
it mesmerizes you.
It does. And you really lose all sense of time.
Okay. Number 7.
Number 7, dhyana. So
I'm looking at my notes here. I'm like trying to
that's good. You're guiding me. Okay. So number 7 is dhyana, which is, everybody knows as meditation.
Okay.
I think further than that though, too, right? So we think of dhyana. So dhyana preps us, that focused concentration preps us to be able to sit in meditation. This is a little more complex because it's not something that we are forcing. We're not attaining it, right? We're not attaining it by forcing or doing. It's, the saying, we're human beings. We're not human doers. I'm sure you've heard that before. A lot of people have heard that. That's the idea with this meditation, is that we get to that point where we're just in it. We don't even realize we're in it, and we are just in it, and we are present and in that meditative state. And it's not by force at all.
And life becomes a moving meditation.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's just a maybe enhanced awareness, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And non-reactive and focused.
And focused.
Reading these things and
and you can see how they all kind of
build on each other. Yeah.
They do. And that's
all
why
leading to
the 8th limb, which is samadhi.
Samadhi. Yeah. I've recently learned about that.
Yeah. Bliss, right? That's what we think of it as, that or enlightenment.
And oneness. Connection to all that is, to all that is. No separation.
Yep. And
if I'm wrong, let me know. I'm just throwing this out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
What like what you're saying? Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. No. Yes. Yes. That we practice. I think Patanjali's idea with this was that we practice all the 7 limbs, and that helps us get to samadhi. Now, samadhi is fleeting, right? So it's not like we're not going to ever stop our minds.
It's not going to be a constant state of existence. It's
moments
of it. Okay.
Yes. And I think it's important to talk about that, because there's this idea that, and I've seen it in the yoga community with students and teachers, where they get caught up in this bliss. Like, I always want to be in this bliss. I always want to be on this like cloud of just peace and enlightenment and joy and happiness. And that's not the case, right?
We're in a world of duality. That's what this realm is duality.
Yes.
So that,
if
exactly.
That was
the case, if we were in that oneness state, we wouldn't be incarnated here at this time.
Absolutely.
And we are here to
So
experience duality. That was our choice. We're here to experience the positive, negative, the black, the white, the duality
yep.
of everything.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's important
So
to
to have
know.
but to have moments of
Oh
the
yeah, go ahead.
samadhi is probably really significant, right? In this world of duality.
100%. And I would assume if you're aware of this, that you've experienced it. I've experienced it. I've had those moments where it's, I mean, it's amazing, right? I don't even have, I don't even have words for it because yes. And you can't describe it. It's again, it's just there. And I think it's important. Yes, exactly. It's like, oh, God, that felt good, you know? And I think it's important to note that we don't want to try to always grasp at that also. So there's this idea too, that we, you know, if we practice all 7 limbs, then we're going to find bliss and we're going to be enlightened and everything's going to be magically perfect and beautiful and unicorns and roses and then done. Yeah. and that's not reality, right? So reality is that the world can be hard and challenging, and we have to navigate that. And can we, you know, be in the center of all that, but not be reactive. So pratyahara again. So not have that knee-jerk reaction and find that those moments of bliss and be so grateful when we have them, when we experience them, and know that they're there, right? That they're not something, it's not so far-fetched. It's not something that, you know, only a few people get to experience. It's available for everybody, but you have to be open to it.
And practice. It sounds like.
And practice.
The 8 limbs are a way to manage life on this planet.
And that is a beautiful way to state it. Absolutely.
And if you're not in samadhi all the time, don't think of yourself as a failure. That's not necessarily what you're reaching for. There's, I don't know if I sent this to you. There's a series on YouTube, 3-part series. They started it in 2017. And the last one was just a year or 2 ago, called Samadhi, the movie.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of visuals and somehow it's really, they try to explain what samadhi is, and they pretty much say it's hard to explain, but you know, it's really interesting. You might want to watch it.
I would love to watch that.
Google or just search for, I think, Samadhi the movie, and there's 3 parts. They're about an hour, a little over an hour long each one.
I love it. I will absolutely look into that.
I might want to look at it too.
Yes. I mean, just you can go down a rabbit hole of all of this, right? And really read and reread and just trying to, you know, digest it all. So, but it's accessible. It's accessible for everybody. And I think more people in this world to understand there's so much more to yoga than just this, you know, physical aspect, although beautiful, making shapes and exploring your body and finding strength and flexibility and endurance and all these beautiful things that come with the practice. It's such a small part of it. It's such a small part of it. And once you practice more, you see that, right? There's like these like aha moments that happen. And I think it's important to note too, not everybody experiences that also, but I would say a lot of people do.
Yeah. Well, this was so fun. Thank you so much, Kristin, for coming on here and explaining all of this.
Yes.
It really was delightful. I really
thank you for having me.
So let's tell them how to find you. Kristin has a
subscription,
like a subscription that you can join to practice her own wonderful yoga classes at home.
Yes. So Vimeo is the platform that I use. And it's vimeo.com/on-demand/yoga with Kristin Schneider. If you just Google yoga with Kristin Schneider, it should pop up.
And I'm going to add it to when we post this information will be on the.
And you can subscribe. You can, it's $24 a month. I add content every month. I have over 80 classes right now that are up. Yeah.
You started this during COVID, as I recall.
I did. I started, like everybody else, had to pivot quickly and figure out how to, you know, do things online. And this is something I've always wanted to do, is to touch people all over the world, if I can. And it kind of just transpired. I had to learn how to use technology,
Mhm.
which I understand a little bit of, but not a lot of. And so
Oh,
I had to
still
figure
working
that
on
out.
it too.
Oh man, I know. And then
Still
filming
working on
classes.
lighting and everything else.
Yeah, everything. Yeah. And just filming classes in general, right? The nerves that come with that and having to talk and practice. And so it's been something that has been a labor of love, but also I'm really proud of. And I just continue to add as much as I can. And if I touch one person or I touch, 1,000 people, that's makes my heart, that's my purpose, right? I feel like I've really leaned into my purpose and have started to trust myself a lot more. And opportunities just continue to arise because of that.
So go subscribe. And as you're doing your
Yes.
yoga or anybody else's, consider and think of the 8 limbs.
Yes, please think of the 8 limbs. They're amazing.
And boy, we really need these. We really need these at this time. There's a lot of paths to managing life and stress, and this is simply one of them, but I think it's a beautiful one. So
I do too. And I think more people could definitely benefit from it too.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.